What's up, guys? And it's me, Lumos Theromax, and this is probably going to be the first or second video I made whenever I finally get everything together. And I hate to be one of those videos to be kind of on the negative side, but in all honesty, I feel like this was something I had to cover. Even though it's not something that's exclusively oriented inside the comics, every once in a while you'll see me jump away from what I traditionally do, although it is mainly in my streams. And if you haven't gotten a chance, feel free to check out my streams. I do a ton of streaming and there's a ton of awesome stuff in there. And I try to cover this stuff more over there because I don't like real world events kind of impacting the channel. But this was something that affected the entire comic book community, right? I made a video a while back about Akira Toriyama's passing, and people thought that was really weird because I cover DC stuff, but I like stuff outside of DC. In fact, I started off the majority of my channel with Marvel, or not my channel, but majority of my history with comic books with Marvel, actually. And that was actually one of the major things that got me into comics in general, was like Marvel comics from the 2000s leading all the way up to like 2015. I really enjoyed messing with comic books inside Marvel. And my problem was I was working a very difficult job at the time that required a lot of my time. I was working like 80+ hour weeks, and I couldn't really invest the time in reading a lot, which sucked. Which brings us to the tragic events of today, or the last few days, I guess. And I don't know when this will be for you guys, whenever you get to see this, but unfortunately we had the tragic passing of Comicstorian. It's a pretty big thing. It hit the entire world, and I'm still a little bit it's just weird, I guess, because whenever I was working those long ass hours, I could use headphones, and so I used to listen to his stuff to help me keep up to date with the most modern comics that were coming out if I couldn't get the chance to purchase them myself, or to catch up on stories I had missed out on. But I wanted to understand what happened in it, but I didn't think it was a good enough story to read. Or even if I just wanted to test the waters with the story, see if I would like the characters involved, or like a character, and see if I want to invest into them more. That's kind of one of the major things that pushed me in the direction of looking at other comics seriously, right? Because my dad was like this super big Green Lantern fan, and a really big Green Lantern fan, but I never really liked too much inside of DC, and I never really gave it a shot because I was kind of threw it to the side, right? But I actually had come across some of Comicstorian's videos, and Comicstorian was one of the first few guys to really kind of help me catch back up, I guess, in the prior eras with like Green Lantern. And it's weird looking back that I have so many people to thank. Like, whenever it comes to my channel and how I organize myself and how I do everything, everybody is a pie that just is pieces sliced off to all these individual people who all had their influences coalesce and come together at a specific time. And that's what makes you who you are. And Comicstorian was part of that. I'd be lying if I told you otherwise. Watching Comicstorian got me through some tough times at that job. It introduced me to a variety of other people who liked comic books, because keep in mind, in the era before Comicstorian, the only places you could go to enjoy comic books or find a community of comic book readers was fucking weeb-ass forums online, or you could go to the comic book store, which, don't get me wrong, is cool, and you can find cool people there, but even though I'm in this crowd, there's like this stereotype about comic book readers, like the guy from The Simpsons, like, oh my god, that's not actually canon, like guys like that. A lot of those crowds just, I don't value a lot of what's going on with that. Comicstorian was a cool guy who kind of blended those things and showed a lot of people you didn't have to be a fucking mega weeb to be into comics. The guy was a former, he served our country, he served America, like he was a soldier. And he used to just talk about stuff like that back in the day, which is eventually what led to his channel. I'm a part of that larger circle, I guess, of him influencing me and getting me through some tough times and dealing with things along those lines. So to see him passing is just, it's kind of surreal. I'm not going to go into details or anything, but the way he passed was also kind of tragic. It was definitely before his time. But I don't like to remember the negatives whenever it comes to people. I like to remember the positives. I always try to remember people for who they were and the positive qualities they brought and the wonderful things they did for the world. And I know it's not just me out there who feels this way about Comicstorian. I don't see a lot of people talking about this, other than like news outlets for some reason. And that's strange to me because I feel like we should honor his memory and his time and his dedication to the community, because he's one of the guys who made comic books not for fucking losers. He's one of the guys who made comic books for everyone, who showed people, showed normies that, hey, you can get invested in this. These stories are cool. It's not just for kids. And that service is one of the biggest services, I think, to comic books in general. It's the perfect advertisement for comics to get more people involved. For a lot of people who watch the movies, guess what? The next thing they do is watch Comicstorian or Comics Explained to get into the comics. He created an entire industry on YouTube showing that comic books could work on YouTube. It's just, the world's a little bit darker without the guy. The comic book community is, to be a little bit more specific, a little bit darker without the guy. I asked a question on my Discord, like, what did Comicstorian hurt Benny mean to you? Like, how did his death impact you, and what was your favorite memory of interacting with Heater's material? And these are just some thoughts from the Theromax Corps. I saw some of his content. It was really cool. I grew up at a time where getting legitimate comics was annoying. You either buy a giant book or you purchase every single issue separately online. The issues I really wanted to be reading turned out to be expensive after their day, so it's not easy finding old comic books, especially in print. This is before comic book sites were uploaded en masse. Comicstorian was my first exposure to just condensing story, making things more accessible and catching my interest in storylines, so I didn't feel like it was a risk to spend $40 on a bunch of physical hardcovers in a complete storyline just for it to be bad. I know it's silly to accredit a YouTube person I have no connection to with, but I legitimately wouldn't be the same person I am today due to the decisions I made after watching Comicstorian and the content of others like him, because the people I got to meet by joining the comics community in general, this one included, obviously. Benny was just he was a rallying force for sanity and fun, and the YouTube needs more of that. It's a real shame. It's a real shame he passed on so early. So remember the good times. I remember listening through a lot of his early GL stuff, because that's what got me associated with Benny. And then eventually Comics Explained, right? Because in that era I liked more of like a detailed, as time went on, I liked more of like a detailed approach to storytelling and stuff like that. So I did like merge a little bit further towards like Comics Explained as time went on. But just because you wind up moving on doesn't mean that there was no value in something that you got from someone else, right? I'll admit I hadn't watched a lot of Benny's content in recent years because I've become such a comic book weeb. I'm the guy who's up. I don't have to watch his content because I'm reading all this shit now. You know, same with Comics Explained. It's just, I don't know if there will be somebody who could do a service to the community like he did. Weirdly enough, he showed a lot of people there was an opportunity for this to even be a career. Comic books is a career, kind of like what I'm doing with you guys. Now, this person said on that question, amazing dude, his energy led off the comics he was reading to and acclimated to it. He was good at following up stories so well that you could just leave him and jump in on your own whenever you wanted. It's true. Another person on the server says he introduced me to comics back in 2015 or 2016, he thinks. Oh, this one's due to Comicstorian. Sorry for the low quality effort video, everyone, but I just had to get this rant out there because the world needs more people like Comicstorian. Later, Lanterns.
Aftermath, you'll join my list of dead after I tear you in half. And I laughed at the thought of them controlling me. I'm the ultimate dragon that spawned everything. I resist and defy.